Hello all, welcome to the next session on storage area networks. So in this session we'll be discussing about object based and unified storage. Let us start by understanding what do we mean by object based storage devices. An object based storage device is a device that organizes and stores unstructured data such as movies, office documents, graphics as a bunch of objects, right? So an object based storage device organizes and stores unstructured data. So if you can recall, in the module 1 we had classified the data as structured and unstructured data. So this object based storage device is used to store and organize the unstructured data in the form of objects. Object based storage provides a scalable and self managed, protected and shared storage option. It provides us with a storage option which offers scalability, self manageability as well as protection to some extent. So object based storage device stores data in the form of objects. So if we consider how do these object based storage devices store the data, all the data is stored in the form of objects, hence the name object based storage devices, right? In simpler way or in short, object based storage devices are used to store the unstructured data in the form of objects. Object based storage devices use something called as a flat address space to store the data. So earlier we had discussed something called as file system in your module 1, which we discussed as a file system to be a hierarchical structure of files. We have the root node, the child node and so on. It is a hierarchical structure, but in object based storage devices it uses flat storage system. There is no hierarchy that is followed, and as a result a large number of objects can be stored in this object based storage devices system, right? In these OSD systems we can store large amounts of data because there is no hierarchy and the address space is called as a flat address space. An object might contain the user data and the related metadata such as the size, the date, ownership and so on, along with the other attributes of the data such as the retention, the access pattern and so on. We need to first understand what an object is. An object contains the user data along with the metadata and the other attributes. Examples for metadata might be the size, the date, ownership and so on. Examples for the attributes of the data may be for what duration the data should be retained, the retention policy or the retention value, how the data should be accessed, the access pattern and so on. As we can see in this particular diagram, each object is stored in the system is identified by the unique object ID here, right? Every object is uniquely identified by its object ID. The object ID is generated using specialized algorithms such as a hash function on the data and guarantees that every object is uniquely identified. So remember, every object is uniquely identified using its object ID, which is generated using specialized algorithms such as a hash function on the data. So and guarantees that every object is uniquely identified. So that is what we have here. Every object in the system is uniquely identified by its object ID. Now let us try to understand what do you mean by object based storage architecture. An input output in the traditional block access method passes through various layers in the IO path. The IO generated by an application passes through the file system, the channel or network and then reaches the disk drive. When the file system receives the IO from an application, the file system maps the incoming IO to the disk blocks. The block interface is used for sending IO over the channel or network to the storage device. The IO is then written to the block allocated on the disk drive. That is shown in this particular diagram here. The file system, as we can see, is having two components. It's having a user component as well as a storage component. The user component of the file system performs the functions such as the hierarchy management as well as naming and user access control, which is shown in this particular diagram. The storage component maps the files to the physical location on the disk drive. So the file system here in this diagram is having two components, the user component and the storage component. The user component of the file system performs hierarchy management, naming and user access control, whereas the storage component maps the files to the physical location on the disk drive. When an application accesses the data stored in the object-based storage devices or in the OSD, the request is sent to the file system user component. Okay, when an application accesses the data stored in the OSD, the request is sent to the file system user component. The file system user component communicates with the OSD interface, which in turn sends the request to the storage device. The storage device has the OSD storage component responsible for managing the access to the object on the storage device. So, an application accesses data in the OSD by sending a request to the file system user component. The file system user component communicates with the OSD interface, which in turn sends the request to the storage device. The storage device has the OSD storage component that is responsible for managing the access to the object on the storage device. So this diagram here illustrates the object level access. After the object is stored, the OSD sends an acknowledgement to the application server, as we can see here. So after the object is stored, the OSD sends an acknowledgement to the application server. The OSD storage component manages all the required low-level storage and space management functions. It also manages the security and access control functions for the objects. Okay, so remember, so OSD systems, so they have the user components as well as the storage components. The application accesses the data stored in the OSD by sending the request to the file system user component, which in turn communicates with the OSD interface. Now the OSD interface sends the request to the storage device. The storage device has the OSD storage component responsible for managing the access to the object on a storage device. Okay, so that is your object-based storage architecture. Now let us try to understand what are the components of OSD. The OSD system is typically composed of three key components, that is the nodes, as it is shown in the diagram. We have the nodes, the private network and the storage, and these are the three key components of OSD. Let us look at the functionalities of these three components in a bit more detail. The OSD system is composed of one or more nodes. Okay, a node is a server that runs the OSD operating environment and provides the services to the user. Provides the services to the services to store, retrieve and manage data in the system. So OSD node is a server that runs the OSD operating system and provides services to store, retrieve and manage the data in the system. The OSD node has two key services, the metadata service and the storage service. The metadata service is responsible for generating the object ID from the contents of a file. Okay, from the contents of a file, the metadata service is responsible for generating the object ID and can also include other attributes of the data. It also maintains the mapping of the object IDs and the file system namespace. The metadata service, it generates the object ID from the contents of a file and also maintains the mapping of the object IDs and the file system namespace. Now the storage service of the OSD node manages a set of disks on which the user data is stored. The OSD node's connect to the storage via the internal network. The internal network provides node to node connectivity and node to storage connectivity. The application server accesses the node to store and retrieve the data over an external network. Okay, the application server accesses the node to store and retrieve the data over an external network. In some implementations, such as content address storage or the CAS, a metadata service might reside on the application server or on a separate server. OSD typically requires low cost and high density disk drives to store the objects. As more capacity is required, more disk drives can be added to the system. Okay, so these are the three components of OSD. We have the OSD node, the internal network, and the storage device. The OSD node in turn is having two sub-components, the metadata service and the storage service. Okay, now let us try to understand the object storage and retrieval in OSD. Okay, as shown on this diagram, the process of storing the objects in the OSD is illustrated. So it is actually a 6-step process. Okay, now to store the objects in the OSD, the first step is the application server sends the file to be stored to the OSD node. As we had seen, the application server is connected to the OSD nodes through an external network. The application server should first present the file to be stored or send the file to be stored to the OSD node. That is the first step in storing the objects in OSD. The next step is the OSD node divides the file into two parts, that is the user data and the metadata. So after the application server has sent the file to be stored to the OSD node, the second step is the OSD node splits the file into two parts, that is the user data and the metadata. Next, the third step is the OSD node generates the object ID using a specialized algorithm. Now this algorithm is executed against the contents of the user data to derive an unique ID to this particular data. So after the OSD node has split the file into user data and metadata, the OSD node generates the object ID using specialized algorithm. The next step is for future access, the OSD node stores the metadata and the object ID using the metadata service. The fifth step is the OSD node stores the data, stores the user data, that is the objects, in the storage device using the storage service of the OSD node. Okay, after the OSD node stores the metadata and the object ID using the metadata service, next the fifth step is the OSD node stores the user data, that is the object, in the storage device. The last step is an acknowledgement is sent to the application server stating that the object has been stored successfully. So these are the 6 steps involved in storing the objects in OSD. The first step is the application server presents the file to be stored to the OSD node, that is the first step. Second step is the OSD node divides the file into two parts, that is the user data and the metadata. Step 3, the OSD node generates the object ID or the unique ID based on the contents of the data. The fourth step, the OSD node stores the metadata object using the metadata service. And the fifth step is OSD stores the object using the storage device. And lastly, an acknowledgement will be sent to the application server stating that the object has been stored successfully. After an object is stored successfully, it is now available for retrieval. Okay, a user accesses the data stored in the OSD by the same file name. The application server retrieves the stored content using the object ID. Now let us see what are the steps involved in retrieving an object from an OSD system. The process of retrieving the objects is illustrated in this particular diagram here. The first step is the application server sends a read request to the OSD system. That is, the application server requests the file from the OSD. The second step is the metadata service receives the object ID from the requested file. So from the file that was requested, the metadata service retrieves its object ID. Third step is the metadata service sends the object ID to the application server. Step 4, the application server sends the object ID to the OSD storage service for object retrieval. So that is the step 4. Step 5, the OSD storage service retrieves the object from the storage device. And lastly, the storage device sends the file to the application server. So for retrieving a file from the OSD system, or for retrieving objects in the OSD system, we need to follow, or 6 steps will be followed, or 6 steps will be processed. Step 1, the application server sends a read request to the OSD system. Step 2, the metadata service retrieves the object ID for the requested file. Step 3, the metadata service sends the object ID to the application server. Step 4, the application server sends the object ID to the OSD storage service for, that is for the OSD storage service for object retrieval. Step 5, the OSD storage service retrieves the object from the storage device. And lastly, the step 6, where the OSD storage service sends the file to the application server. So this is the object storage and retrieval in OSD. Now let us briefly go through the benefits of object-based storage, or object-based storage devices, or OSDs. The first benefit is security and reliability. The data integrity and the content authenticity are the key features of the OSD devices. OSD uses specialized algorithms to create objects that provide a strong data encryption capability. In OSD, request authentication is performed at the storage device rather than with an external authentication mechanisms. So OSD offers very good security and reliability. The second benefit is platform independence. Let us see what it is. Objects are abstract containers of data, including the metadata and its attributes. This feature allows objects to be shared across heterogeneous platforms, both locally as well as remotely. Now, this platform independence capability makes the object-based storage the best candidate for cloud computing environments. Since OSD or object-based storage devices offer platform independence, it is the best choice for cloud computing environments. Third benefit is scalability. Due to the use of flat address space, object-based storage can handle large amounts of data without impacting the performance. Both storage and the OSD nodes can be scaled independently in terms of performance and capacity. You can go on adding more storage to the storage service or to the storage device of the OSD system. Okay, thereby it offers very high scalability. And lastly, OSD or the object-based storage also offers manageability, which is one more benefit. So object-based storage has an inherent intelligence to manage and protect the objects. It uses self-healing capability to protect and replicate the objects. Policy-based management capability helps OSD to handle routine jobs automatically. So most of the jobs is automated, hence manageability is considerably improved. So these are the 4 benefits of OSD or object-based storage devices. We have security and reliability, platform independence, scalability, and manageability. Now also let us go through the common use cases for OBS or OSD devices. The one common use case is for archival solution. If you want to dump the data into the archives, so OSD is the best option. The second common use case is for implementation of something called as content address storage or cache systems, which is best used for handling the fixed content. Now, what is fixed content? See, there are some data which will be fixed and will not be modified or manipulated. Examples are the medical records of the patient, or it may be the X-ray images, it may be the scanned check leaves, it may be invoices of an online e-commerce website. So all these data, they just needs to be stored as they are fixed in their nature. They will not, no one is going to modify these contents. So for handling the fixed content, we have a system called as Content Address Storage System, or the CAS. Now for implementing CAS, object-based storage is the best option. That is the second use case. First use case was for data archival. The second use case we have is for CAS system. So another very important use case is for cloud-based storage, as we just discussed. Since cloud offers platform independence, it is the best suitable option for implementing cloud-based storage. Okay. So these are the use cases. We discussed the benefits and the use cases. Now let us try to understand a bit more about what is this content address storage, or CAS. CAS is an object-based storage device designed for secure online storage and retrieval of fixed content. We just discussed what is fixed content. The content or the files which will not be modified. The contents of that file will be fixed. We call it as a fixed content. For handling fixed content, we can use CAS, which is again an object-based storage device designed for secure online and retrieval of the fixed content. CAS stores user data and its attribute as an object. Okay, the stored object is assigned uniquely a globally unique address known as the content address. Just like what we had object ID, here we use one more term called as a content address for uniquely identifying an object. Now this content address is derived from the object's binary representations. CAS provides an optimized and centrally managed storage solution. Okay, so using CAS we can centrally manage the fixed content in an optimized way. Now CAS differs from other OSD device, or data access in CAS is differed from other OSD devices. In CAS, the application server access the CAS device only through the CAS API running on the application server. So in content address storage, the application server accesses the CAS device only through the CAS API running on the application server. However, the way CAS stores data is similar to the other OSD systems. CAS provides all the features required for storing the fixed contents. Now let us see what are the features that is offered by the content address storage system, or the CAS. First feature is content authenticity. CAS ensures the genuineness of the stored content. Let us first see what do you mean by the content authenticity. CAS assures the genuineness of the stored content, which is achieved by generating the unique content address for each object and validating the content address for stored objects at regular intervals. Content authenticity is assured because the address assigned to each object is as unique as a fingerprint. Every time an object is read, CAS uses a hashing algorithm to recalculate the object's content address as a validation step and compares the result to its original content address. If the object fails validation, CAS rebuilds the object using a mirror or a parity protection scheme. So CAS, one of the major features of CAS is content authenticity. That is, it assures the genuineness of the stored content by generating a unique content address for each object and validating the content address for stored objects at regular intervals. The second feature of CAS is content integrity. Let us see what is this content integrity feature offered by CAS. CAS provides assurance that the stored content has not been altered in any way. Okay. CAS uses hashing algorithm for content authenticity and integrity. If the fixed content is altered, CAS generates a new address for the altered content rather than override the original fixed content. See, the basic purpose of CAS is to handle the fixed content. So content integrity should be maintained. The CAS ensures that the stored content has not been altered by using hashing algorithm for the content authenticity and its integrity. The third feature of CAS is location independence. CAS uses a unique content address rather than the directory path names or the URLs. This makes the physical location of the data irrelevant to the application that requests the data. So location of the data will be irrelevant to the application that requests the data because CAS uses a unique address instead of the directory path names and the URLs. The fourth feature of CAS is something called as SIS, or single instance storage. Let us see what is this. Cache uses a unique content address to guarantee the storage of only a single instance of an object. When a new object is written, the cache system is polled to see whether an object is already available with the same content address. If the object is available in the system, it is not stored, instead only a pointer to an object is created. So one object is stored only once, hence it offers a feature called as single instance storage. The next feature we have is something called as retention enforcement. Let us see what is that. Protecting and retaining objects is a core requirement of an archive storage system. So after an object is stored in cache system and retention policy is defined, cache does not make the object available for deletion until the policy expires. For every data that is stored as a fixed content in cache, we have certain retention policy. That is, it specifies for what duration of the time data should be stored and after what duration of the time the data can be deleted. So once a retention policy for a particular data or object is defined, cache does not make the object available for deletion until the policy expires. For example, if there is a policy saying that the medical data of the patient should be stored for 6 months, cache ensures that the data is stored for 6 months. If there is some request for modification of deletion of the data, that will not be allowed by the cache system, because every time it matches the retention policy with the data. So if it's a medical data, if the retention policy says that it should be stored for 6 months, cache assures that the data is protected for 6 months. That is one of the features of cache called as a retention enforcement. The next feature that we have is called as a data protection. Cache ensures the content stored on the cache system is available even if the disk or the node fails. Okay, even if the disk or the node fails, the cache ensures that the data is protected. Cache provides both local and remote protection to the data objects that is stored on it. In the local protection option, the data objects are either mirrored or parity protected. So in mirror protection, 2 copies of the data objects are stored on 2 different nodes in the same cluster. This decreases the total available capacity by 50%. In the parity protection, the data object is split into multiple parts and the parity is generated from them. Each part of the data and its parity are stored on a different node. This method consumes less capacity to protect the data but takes slightly longer to regenerate the data if the corruption of the data occurs. Okay. In the remote replication option, data objects are copied to a secondary cache at the remote location. In this case, the objects remain accessible from the secondary cache if the primary cache system fails. So cache also offers data protection either by using the mirroring technique or by using the parity technique. So mirroring technique, it consumes double the storage space, whereas parity technique, it sometimes slows down the data retrieval process or the data storage process, data retrieval process if the primary data is lost. The second option is storing the data at a remote site. We can have a remote cache system at some other location, maybe across some other country, from where we can access the data if the data present in the primary cache is not available. So that is how the cache system offers data protection feature. The next feature that is offered by the cache system is fast record retrieval. Let us see what is that fast record retrieval. Cache stores all the objects on the disks, which provide faster access to the objects compared to the tapes and optical disks. So all the data in the cache system is stored on the disks, which offers faster access. Okay. The next feature of cache is load balancing. Cache distributes objects across multiple nodes to provide maximum throughput and maximum availability. So rather than overloading a particular node, all the data in the cache is distributed across all the multiple nodes there. Next feature offered by the cache is scalability. Cache allows the addition or deletion of more nodes to the cluster without any interruption to data access and with minimum administrative overhead. So thereby it offers very high scalability. The next feature of cache is event notification. Cache continuously monitors the state of the system and raises an alert for any event that requires the administrator's attention. The event notification is communicated to the administrator through the SMTP or SNMP or email. Okay. So it also offers event notification features by continuously monitoring the state of the system. The next feature of the CAS is self-diagnosis and repair. CAS automatically detects and repairs corrupted objects and alters the administrator and alerts the administrators about the potential problem. So CAS automatically detects and repairs corrupted objects and alerts the administrator about the potential problem. CAS systems can be configured to alert remote support systems or support teams who can diagnose and repair the system remotely. So CAS automatically detects and repairs the corrupted objects and alerts the administrator about the potential problems. The CAS systems can be configured to alert the remote support teams as well, who can diagnose and repair the systems remotely. And lastly, CAS also offers the audit trail feature. CAS keep track of the management activities and any access or disposition of the data. Audit trails are mandated by compliance requirements. So we can track which data was accessed by whom, or when was the last data that was accessed. All these things can be tracked using these audit trails. So these are the features of content address storage. It offers content authenticity, content integrity, location independence, single instance storage, retention enforcement, data protection, fast record retrieval, load balancing, scalability, event notification, self-diagnosis and repair, and lastly, audit trails. Now let us proceed and let us try to understand something called as unified storage. Okay, unified storage consolidates block, file and object access into a single storage solution. So you can combine block level access, file level access and object level access into a single storage solution called as a unified storage. It supports multiple protocols such as CIFS, NFS, iSCSI, FC, FCOE and REST and SOAP protocol. As we had discussed earlier, CIFS and NFS is used for implementing NAS, iSCSI, FC and FCOE are used for implementing the SAN, and REST and SOAP are used for implementing object-based storage. Okay. So these are the. Let us briefly go through the components of the unified storage system. A unified storage system consists of the following key components. So it's having a storage controller, a NAS head, a OSD node and the storage. The storage controller provides block level access to the application servers through the iSCSI, FC or FCOE protocols. It contains iSCSI, FC or FCOE front-end ports for direct block access. The storage controller is also responsible for managing the back-end storage pool in the storage system. The controller configures the LUNs and presents them to the application servers, NAS heads and the OSD nodes. The LUNs presented to the application server appear as local physical disks. Okay, the LUNs that are provided appear as the local physical disks. A file system is configured on these LUNs and is made available to the applications for storing the data. Then we have the NAS head for implementing NAS. A NAS head is a dedicated file server that provides file access to the NAS clients. The NAS head is connected to the storage through the storage controller, typically using a FC or a FCOE connection. The system is typically having two parts, two or more NAS heads for ensuring redundancy. The LUNs presented to the NAS head appear as physical disks. The NAS head configures the file systems on these disks, creates NFS, CIFS or a mixed share and exports the share to the NAS clients. The OSD nodes accesses the storage through the storage controller using a FC or a FCOE connection. The LUNs assigned to the OSD node appear as physical disks. These disks are configured by the OSD nodes, enabling them to store the data from the web application servers. So these are the components of unified storage. As the name suggests, you can implement fiber channel or network attached storage or object-based storage system using a single large pool of storage. That is your unified storage system. So it consolidates block level, file level as well as object access into a single storage solution. Now let us go through the data access in unified storage. There are three ways in which, or three types of data access in unified storage. We have the block IO request, the file IO request, and the object IO request. So in the block IO request, the application servers are connected to an fiber channel or FC, iSCSI or FCOE port on the storage controller. The server sends a block request over an FC, iSCSI or FCOE connection. The storage processor processes the IO and responds to the application server. As it is shown in this diagram, in block IO, the application servers are connected to an fiber FC, iSCSI or an FCOE port on the storage controller. The server sends a block request over an FC, iSCSI or FCOE connection. The storage processor processes the IO and responds to the application server. Next we have the file IO request. The NAS clients, that is where the NAS share is mounted or mapped, sends a file request to the NAS head using the NFS or the CIFS protocol. The NAS head receives the request, converts it into a block request and forwards it to the storage controller. Upon receiving the block data from the storage controller, the NAS head again converts the block data back to the file request and sends it to the client. So that is your file IO request. And lastly, we have the object IO request. The web application servers sends an object request, typically using the REST or SOAP protocols, to the OSD nodes. The OSD node receives this request and converts it to a block level request and sends it to the disk through the same storage controller. The storage controller in turn processes the block request and responds back to the OSD node, which in turn provides the requested object to the web application server. So this is the three types of data access in your unified storage: block IO request or block access, file access, as well as the object access. So that is your unified storage. With this, we have reached the end of this particular chapter. Let us briefly go through the contents that we have discussed in this session. So we saw what do you mean by object-based storage devices. We saw how is the flashed address space beneficial, since flat address space allows us to store larger number of data. We saw what is an object, how the object ID is generated. Then we saw the object-based storage architecture. We discussed the components of object-based storage devices. We saw how the objects are stored and retrieved in OSD. We discussed the benefits of object-based storage. Then we moved on to something called as CAS, or the content address storage. We saw what is content address storage, the features that is offered by content address storage. Then at the end, we discussed what is unified storage and what are the different ways in which the data can be accessed in the unified storage. Thank you.